Chapter 14. The sorceress opened a magical work and muttered some unintelligible words in a sepulchral voice, looked at the remaining millet seeds, and watched the way in which the toad retired. Then, after 7 or 8 minutes, she turned her white eyes on the cards and expounded them. "You will succeed, although nothing in the affair will fall out as you expect. You will have many steps to take, but you will reap the fruits of your labors. You will behave very badly. It will be with you as it is with all those who sit by a sick bed and covet part of the inheritance. Great people will help you in this work of wrongdoing. Afterwards, in the death agony, you will repent. 2 escaped convicts, a short man with red hair and an old man with a bald head, will murder you for the sake of the money you will be supposed to have, in the village whither you will retire with your second husband. Now, my daughter, it is still open to you to choose your course." The excitement which seemed to glow within, lighting up the bony hollows about the eyes, was suddenly extinguished. As soon as the horoscope was pronounced, Madame Fontaine's face wore a dazed expression. She looked exactly like a sleep-walker aroused from sleep, gazed about her with an astonished air, recognized Madame Cibot, and seemed surprised by her terrified face. "Well, child," she said in a totally different voice, "are you satisfied?" Madame Cibot stared stupidly at the sorceress and could not answer. "Ah, you would have the grand jeu. I have treated you as an old acquaintance. I only want 100 francs." "Cibot? Going to die?" gasped the portress. "So I have been telling you very dreadful things, have I?" asked Madame Fontaine with an extremely ingenuous air. "Why, yes," said La Cibot, taking 100 francs from her pocket and laying them down on the edge of the table. "Going to be murdered! Think of it!" "Ah, there it is. You would have the grand jeu, but don't take on so. All the folk that are murdered on the cards don't die." "But is it possible, Ma'am Fontaine?" "Oh, I know nothing about it, my pretty dear. You would rap at the door of the future. I pull the cord, and it came." "It? What?" asked Madame Cibot. "Well, then, the spirit!" cried the sorceress impatiently. "Good-bye, Ma'am Fontaine," exclaimed the portress. "I did not know what the grand jeu was like. You have given me a good fright, that you have." "The mistress will not put herself in that state twice in a month," said the servant, as she went with La Cibot to the landing. "She would do herself to death if she did, it tires her so. She will eat cutlets now, and sleep for 3 hours afterwards." Out in the street, La Cibot took counsel of herself as she went along, and, after the manner of all who ask for advice of any sort or description, she took the favorable part of the prediction and rejected the rest. The next day found her confirmed in her resolutions. She would set all in train to become rich by securing a part of Pons' collection. Nor for some time had she any other thought than the combination of various plans to this end. The faculty of self-concentration seen in rough, uneducated persons, explained on a previous page, the reserve power accumulated in those whose mental energies are unworn by the daily wear and tear of social life, and brought into action so soon as that terrible weapon, the fixed idea, is brought into play, all this was preeminently manifested in La Cibot. Even as the fixed idea works miracles of evasion and brings forth prodigies of sentiment, so greed transformed the portress till she became as formidable as a Nucingen at bay, as subtle, beneath her seeming stupidity, as the irresistible La Palférine. About 7 o'clock one morning, a few days afterwards, she saw Remonencq taking down his shutters. She went across to him. "How could one find out how much the things yonder in my gentleman's rooms are worth?" she asked in a wheedling tone. "Oh, that is quite easy," replied the owner of the old curiosity shop. If you will play fair and above board with me, I will tell you of somebody, a very honest man, who will know the value of the pictures to a farthing." "Who?" "Monsieur Magus, a Jew. He only does business to amuse himself now." Elie Magus has appeared so often in the Comédie Humaine that it is needless to say more of him here. Suffice it to add that he had retired from business, and as a dealer was following the example set by Pons the amateur. Well-known valuers like Henri, Messieurs Pigeot and Moret, Terray, Georges, and Rouen, the experts of the Musée, in fact, were but children compared with Elie Magus. He could see a masterpiece beneath the accumulated grime of a century. He knew all schools and the handwriting of all painters. He had come to Paris from Bordeaux, and so long ago as 1835 he had retired from business without making any change for the better in his dress, so faithful is the race to old tradition. The persecutions of the Middle Ages compelled them to wear rags, to snuffle and whine and groan over their poverty in self-defense, till the habits induced by the necessities of other times have come to be, as usual, instinctive, a racial defect. Elie Magus had amassed a vast fortune by buying and selling diamonds, pictures, lace, enamels, delicate carvings, old jewelry, and rarities of all kinds, a kind of commerce which has developed enormously of late, so much so indeed that the number of dealers has increased tenfold during the last 20 years in this city of Paris, whither all the curiosities in the world come to rub against one another. And for pictures there are but 3 marts in the world: Rome, London, and Paris. Elie Magus lived in the Chaussée des Minimes, a short, broad street leading to the Place Royale. He had bought the house, an old-fashioned mansion, for a song, as the saying is, in 1831. Yet there were sumptuous apartments within it, decorated in the time of Louis XV, for it had once been the Hôtel Maulincour, built by the great president of the Cour des Aides, and its remote position had saved it at the time of the Revolution. You may be quite sure that the old Jew had sound reasons for buying house property, contrary to the Hebrew law and custom. He had ended, as most of us end, with a hobby that bordered on a craze. He was as miserly as his friend, the late lamented Gobseck, but he had been caught by the snare of the eyes, by the beauty of the pictures in which he dealt. As his taste grew more and more fastidious, it became one of the passions which princes alone can indulge when they are wealthy and art-lovers. As the second king of Prussia found nothing that so kindled enthusiasm as the spectacle of a grenadier over 6 feet high, and gave extravagant sums for a new specimen to add to his living museum of a regiment, so the retired picture dealer was roused to passion pitch only by some canvas in perfect preservation, untouched since the master laid down the brush. And what was more, it must be a picture of the painter's best time. No great sales, therefore, took place, but Elie Magus was there. Every mart knew him. He travelled all over Europe. The ice-cold, money-worshipping soul in him kindled at the sight of a perfect work of art, precisely as a libertine, weary of fair women, is roused from apathy by the sight of a beautiful girl, and sets out afresh upon the quest of flawless loveliness. A Don Juan among fair works of art, a worshipper of the ideal, Elie Magus had discovered joys that transcend the pleasure of a miser gloating over his gold. He lived in a seraglio of great paintings. His masterpieces were housed, as became the children of princes. The whole first floor of the great old mansion was given up to them. The rooms had been restored under Elie Magus's orders, and with what magnificence! The windows were hung with the richest Venetian brocade, the most splendid carpets from the Savonnerie covered the parquetry flooring. The frames of the pictures, nearly 100 in number, were magnificent specimens, re-gilded cunningly by Servet, the one gilder in Paris whom Elie Magus thought sufficiently painstaking. The old Jew himself had taught him to use the English leaf, which is infinitely superior to that produced by French gold beaters. Servet is among gilders as Touvenin among bookbinders, an artist among craftsmen, making his work a labor of love. Every window in that gallery was protected by iron-barred shutters. Elie Magus himself lived in a couple of attics on the floor above. The furniture was wretched, the rooms were full of rags, and the whole place smacked of the ghetto. Elie Magus was finishing his days without any change in his life. The whole of the ground floor was given up to the picture trade, for the Jew still dealt in works of art. Here he stored his canvases, here also packing cases were stowed on their arrival from other countries, and still there was room for a vast studio, where Moret, most skilful of restorers of pictures, a craftsman whom the Musée ought to employ, was almost always at work for Magus. The rest of the rooms on the ground floor were given up to Magus's daughter, the child of his old age, a Jewess as beautiful as a Jewess can be when the Semitic type reappears in its purity and nobility in a daughter of Israel. Noemi was guarded by two servants, fanatical Jewesses, to say nothing of an advanced guard, a Polish Jew, Abramko by name, once involved in a fabulous manner in political troubles, from which Elie Magus saved him as a business speculation. Abramko, porter of the silent, grim, deserted mansion, divided his office and his lodge with three remarkably ferocious animals: an English bulldog, a Newfoundland dog, and another of the Pyrenean breed. Behold the profound observations of human nature upon which Elie Magus based his feeling of security, for secure he felt. He left home without misgivings, slept with both ears shut, and feared no attempt upon his daughter, his chief treasure, his pictures, or his money. In the first place, Abramko's salary was increased every year by 200 francs, so long as his master should live, and Magus, moreover, was training Abramko as a money-lender in a small way. Abramko never admitted anybody until he had surveyed them through a formidable grated opening. He was a Hercules for strength. He worshipped Elie Magus as Sancho Panza worshipped Don Quixote. All day long the dogs were shut up without food. At nightfall Abramko let them loose, and by a cunning device the old Jew kept each animal at his post in the courtyard or the garden by hanging a piece of meat just out of reach on the top of a pole. The animals guarded the house, and sheer hunger guarded the dogs. No odor that reached their nostrils could tempt them from the neighborhood of that piece of meat. They would not have left their places at the foot of the poles for the most engaging female of the canine species. If a stranger by any chance intruded, the dogs suspected him of ulterior designs upon their rations, which were only taken down in the morning by Abramko himself when he awoke. The advantages of this fiendish scheme are patent. The animals never barked. Magus's ingenuity had made savages of them. They were treacherous as Mohicans. And now for the result. One night, burglars, emboldened by the silence, decided too hastily that it would be easy enough to clean out the old Jew's strong-box. One of their number told off to advance to the assault, scrambled up the garden wall, and prepared to descend. This the bulldog allowed him to do. The animal, knowing perfectly well what was coming, waited for the burglar to reach the ground. But when that gentleman directed a kick at him, the bulldog flew at the visitor's shins, and, making but one bite of it, snapped the ankle bone clean in two. The thief had the courage to tear him away, and returned, walking upon the bare bone of the mutilated stump till he reached the rest of the gang, when he fell fainting, and they carried him off. The police news, of course, did not fail to report this delightful night incident, but no one believed in it. Magus at this time was 75 years old, and there was no reason why he should not live to 100. Rich man though he was, he lived like the Remonencqs. His necessary expenses, including the money he lavished on his daughter, did not exceed 3,000 francs. No life could be more regular. The old man rose as soon as it was light, breakfasted on bread rubbed with a clove of garlic, and ate no more food until dinner time. Dinner, a meal frugal enough for a convent, he took at home. All the forenoons he spent among his treasures, walking up and down the gallery where they hung in their glory. He would dust everything himself, furniture and pictures. He never wearied of admiring. Then he would go downstairs to his daughter, drink deep of a father's happiness, and start out upon his walks through Paris to attend sales or visit exhibitions and the like. If Elie Magus found a great work of art under the right conditions, the discovery put new life into the man. Here was a bit of sharp practice, a bargain to make, a battle of Marengo to win. He would pile ruse on ruse to buy the new sultana as cheaply as possible. Magus had a map of Europe on which all great pictures were marked. His co-religionists in every city spied out business for him, and received a commission on the purchase. And then, what rewards for all his pains! The two lost Raphaels, so earnestly sought after by Raphael lovers, are both in his collection. Elie Magus owns the original portrait of Giorgione's mistress, the woman for whom the painter died. The so-called originals are merely copies of the famous picture, which is worth 500,000 francs, according to its owner's estimation. This Jew possesses Titian's masterpiece, an entombment painted for Charles V, sent by the great man to the great emperor with a holograph letter, now fastened down upon the lower part of the canvas. And Magus has yet another Titian, the original sketch from which all the portraits of Philip II were painted. His remaining 97 pictures are all of the same rank and distinction. Wherefore Magus laughs at our national collection, raked by the sunlight which destroys the fairest paintings, pouring in through panes of glass that act as lenses. Picture galleries can only be lighted from above. Magus opens and closes his shutters himself. He is as careful of his pictures as of his daughter, his second idol. And well the old picture fancier knows the laws of the lives of pictures. To hear him talk, a great picture has a life of its own. It is changeable. It takes its beauty from the color of the light. Magus talks of his paintings as Dutch fanciers used to talk of their tulips. He will come home on purpose to see some one picture in the hour of its glory, when the light is bright and clean. And Magus himself was a living picture among the motionless figures on the wall. A little old man dressed in a shabby overcoat, a silk waistcoat, renewed twice in a score of years, and a very dirty pair of trousers, with a bald head, a face full of deep hollows, a wrinkled callous skin, a beard that had a trick of twitching its long white bristles, a menacing pointed chin, a toothless mouth, eyes bright as the eyes of his dogs in the yard, and a nose like an obelisk. There he stood in his gallery, smiling at the beauty called into being by genius. A Jew surrounded by his millions will always be one of the finest spectacles which humanity can give. Robert Madal, our great actor, cannot rise to this height of poetry, sublime though he is. Paris, of all the cities of the world, holds most of such men as Magus, strange beings with a strange religion in their heart of hearts. The London eccentric always finds that worship, like life, brings weariness and satiety in the end. The Parisian monomaniac lives cheerfully in concubinage with his crotchet to the last. Often shall you meet in Paris some Pons, some Elie Magus, dressed badly enough, with his face turned from the rising sun, like the countenance of the perpetual secretary of the Académie, apparently heeding nothing, conscious of nothing, paying no attention to shop windows nor to fair passers-by, walking at random, so to speak, with nothing in his pockets, and to all appearance an equally empty head. Do you ask to what Parisian tribe this manner of man belongs? He is a collector, a millionaire, one of the most impassioned souls upon earth. He and his like are capable of treading the miry ways that lead to the police court, if so they may gain possession of a cup, a picture, or some such rare unpublished piece as Elie Magus once picked up one memorable day in Germany. This was the expert to whom Remonencq, with much mystery, conducted La Cibot. Remonencq always asked advice of Elie Magus when he met him in the streets, and more than once Magus had lent him money through Abramko, knowing Remonencq's honesty. The Chaussée des Minimes is close to the Rue de Normandie, and the two fellow conspirators reached the house in 10 minutes. "You will see the richest dealer in curiosities, the greatest connoisseur in Paris," Remonencq had said. And Madame Cibot, therefore, was struck dumb with amazement to be confronted with a little old man in a greatcoat too shabby for Cibot to mend, standing watching a painter at work upon an old picture in the chilly room on the vast ground floor. The old man's eyes, full of cold, feline malignance, were turned upon her, and La Cibot shivered. "What do you want, Remonencq?" asked this person. "It is a question of valuing some pictures. There is nobody but you in Paris who can tell a poor tinker fellow like me how much he may give when he has not thousands to spend like you." "Where is it?" "Here is the portress of the house where the gentleman lives. She does for him, and I have arranged with her." "Who is the owner?" "Monsieur Pons," put in La Cibot. "Don't know the name," said Magus, with an innocent air, bringing down his foot very gently upon his artist's toes. Moret, the painter, knowing the value of Pons's collection, had looked up suddenly at the name. It was a move too hazardous to try with anyone but Remonencq and La Cibot, but the Jew had taken the woman's measure at sight, and his eye was as accurate as a jeweller's scales. It was impossible that either of the couple should know how often Magus and old Pons had matched their claws, and in truth both rabid amateurs were jealous of each other. The old Jew had never hoped for a sight of a seraglio so carefully guarded. It seemed to him that his head was swimming. Pons's collection was the one private collection in Paris which could vie with his own. Pons's idea had occurred to Magus 20 years later, but as a dealer amateur the door of Pons's museum had been closed to him, as for Dusommerard. Pons and Magus had at heart the same jealousy. Neither of them cared about the kind of celebrity dear to the ordinary collector. And now for Elie Magus came his chance to see the poor musician's treasures. An amateur of beauty hiding in a boudoir, or a stolen glance at a mistress concealed from him by his friend, might feel as Elie Magus felt at that moment. La Cibot was impressed by Remonencq's respect for this singular person. Real power, moreover, even when it cannot be explained, is always felt. The portress was supple and obedient. She dropped the autocratic tone which she was wont to use in her lodge and with the tenants, accepted Magus's conditions, and agreed to admit him into Pons's museum that very day. So the enemy was to be brought into the citadel, and a stab dealt to Pons's very heart. For 10 years Pons had carried his keys about with him. He had forbidden La Cibot to allow anyone, no matter whom, to cross his threshold, and La Cibot had so far shared Schmucke's opinions of bric-a-brac that she had obeyed him. The good Schmucke, by speaking of the splendors as chimcracks, and deploring his friend's mania, had taught La Cibot to despise the old rubbish, and so secured Pons's museum from invasion for many a long year. When Pons took to his bed, Schmucke filled his place at the theatre and gave lessons for him at his boarding schools. He did his utmost to do the work of two, but Pons' sorrows weighing heavily upon his mind, the task took all his strength. He only saw his friend in the morning, and again at dinner-time. His pupils and the people at the theatre, seeing the poor German look so unhappy, used to ask for news of Pons, and so great was his grief that the indifferent would make the grimaces of sensibility which Parisians are wont to reserve for the greatest calamities. The very springs of life had been attacked. The good German was suffering from Pons' pain as well as from his own. When he gave a music lesson, he spent half the time in talking of Pons, interrupting himself to wonder whether his friend felt better to-day, and the little schoolgirls listening heard lengthy explanations of Pons' symptoms. He would rush over to the Rue de Normandie in the interval between two lessons for the sake of a quarter of an hour with Pons. When at last he saw that their common stock was almost exhausted, when Mme. Cibot, who had done her best to swell the expenses of the illness, came to him and frightened him, then the old music-master felt that he had courage of which he never thought himself capable, courage that rose above his anguish. For the first time in his life, he set himself to earn money. Money was needed at home. One of the schoolgirl pupils, really touched by their troubles, asked Schmucke how he could leave his friend alone. "Mademoiselle," he answered with the sublime smile of those who think no evil, "we have Montame Zipod, ein treasure, mademoiselle, ein pearl. Pons is nursed like ein prince." So, while Schmucke trotted about the streets, La Cibot was mistress of the house and ruled the invalid. How should Pons superintend his self-appointed guardian angel when he had taken no solid food for a fortnight, and lay there so weak and helpless that La Cibot was obliged to lift him up and carry him to the sofa while she made the bed? La Cibot's visit to Elie Magus was paid, as might be expected, while Schmucke breakfasted. She came in again just as the German was bidding his friend good-bye, for since she learned that Pons possessed a fortune, she never left the old bachelor. She brooded over him and his treasures like a hen. From the depths of a comfortable easy-chair at the foot of the bed, she poured forth for Pons' delectation the gossip in which women of her class excel. With Machiavellian skill, she had contrived to make Pons think that she was indispensable to him. She coaxed and she wheedled, always uneasy, always on the alert.